So today, I chatted to Lee a few months ago as we began to prepare for me coming over. And he mentioned I hadn't for a while given you some backgrounds and some stats about Wales. So for some it's going to be a reminder, but for most of us it will be brand new. Firstly, understand this. Imagine Wales. That fits 33 times into Texas. It's 380 miles north to south, 170 miles from east to west. There's 3 million people, but 12.5 million sheep. So 5 sheep to every person, best lamb dinner in the world. It's a land littered with castles and forts and remnants of battles with the Anglos. They don't like the English. Wales is no more England than Canada is the USA. Or Austria is Germany. It's a different country. And, there's, they've just got their way of the way that they speak of the English. And every Welsh person has got a T-shirt like this. It's in their drawer somewhere. You can get one from the market or any souvenir store. And on the front, there'll be a map of Wales, a lovely map of Wales, and it'll say, "I love Wales." And as a person walks away from me on the back and says, "Any team, and also we hate any team that's playing against England." That's what it'll say. And it's just a stock T-shirt that everybody seems to have. There's a rivalry there. They love their language. They have their own language. 20% speak it. It's growing fast, although everyone speaks English. Rugby is the main sport. I told you how small the country is, yet they're top 6 in the world. They regularly reach the semi-final of the World Cup in rugby. They regularly beat England, 70 million, France, 70 million. They beat Australia not long ago, 50 million people. This is a major rugby country in the world. Their famous emblems are the red dragon and, of course, the leek, a strange onion that they like to put in their food from all angles. Everything's got a leek in it. But it's a great taste. It's an onion. They even wear a live leek on St. David's Day. Don't get there. Everybody walks around smelling like onions. I don't get it, but that's what they do. They love to sing their national anthem. And when they go to a sports event, whether that be soccer or whether that be rugby, 72,000, that's the national stadium, maximum capacity, 72,000 people sing the national anthem. It's like heaven. It's incredible. They sing it with incredible passion. Wales has an incredible past. Christianity arrived in Wales in the 3rd century. Hear that? 3rd century. Had many spiritual heroes, of course, St. David, the patron saint, William Morgan, who translated the Bible into Welsh, Howell Harris, David Rowlands, contemporaries of Whitefield and Wesley. In the 19th century, a one-eyed preacher who came from gangland, a fighter who lost his eye fighting, began to move across Wales, especially South Wales. And he planted the very core church that you partner with in the pub 50 yards away. He was the preacher you didn't argue with. He got strong fists. He liked to fight. He was an earthy kind of fella. And you're going to see when you go to the pub 50 yards away, like I say, there's a little kind of plaque on the wall. Christmas Evans planted Ainan Baptist Church in here, and I think it's 1874. Wow, what a heritage. What an incredible heritage it is. In 1904, an unprecedented thing happened. On Thursday, September the 29th, 1904, a 26-year-old student called Evan Roberts from Glamorgan, he was a member and a Sunday school attendant of Moriah Chapel, which is about 30 miles from where you are. He began to say that he had a visitation. That's what the word he used, a visitation from God. And he began to tell people of how to become Christians, how to be saved by God, and how much God loved them. In 6 months, documented fact, 150,000 people became Christians in 6 months. It spread into England, into Ireland, into Scotland, and around the world for the next 4 to 5 years. In the US, in Atlanta and Denver and Columbus, legislators couldn't meet because they didn't have crimes to solve. This is how deep the revival began to go into society. In Wales, a true change in society occurred. A church was started every 8 days. Every 8 days for about over a 5-year period. Crime rates dropped. Magistrates were coming to court in Wales, not having any criminals to sort out, just like in America. The pubs began to empty. The pit ponies started not to be able to understand what the miners were saying because they weren't cussing at them. So they stopped cussing. The ponies had no idea what to do. They had to retrain the ponies. These are documented facts. The dark tunnels in the underground of the mines began to ring with prayers and hymns. Imagine miners down in the tunnels ringing true. Imagine the acoustics down there. Men spent money paying overdue bills and on clothes and food for their family instead of squandering it in the pub. Rifts between families and friends were healed. The stories are huge about all of that. And the story goes that a reporter came from London to the Rhondda Valley, the center of the revival, and he asked a policeman, "Where's the revival?" And the policeman said, "Right here, my friend, inside my heart," and led him to the Lord. It was incredible. It was reported by the end of 1908, 5 million people were saved around the world. But it's in a dire state at the moment. It's a dire state. That's 120 years ago. 7% go to church. Evangelical Alliance statistics tell us that about 2% are saved. Secularism is the fastest growing belief. And in the Rhondda, where the revival broke out with Evan Roberts, Evangelical Alliance statistics tell us that 0.4% of the people know Jesus as Lord and Savior. How sad. And that's why Missional Links Wales exists. That's why we're there. We want to see revival again. We're convinced that if churches in the USA, in partnership with churches in Wales, gather together and create impetus to reach their villages, to reach their towns, to reach their cities across Wales, if they all do that, we can play a part in the transformation of Wales again. It's not some kind of like magic wand that we're going to wave. We're going to reach people one by one, person by person. But when we all do it, it begins to take effect. And we are glad and we are grateful that you're involved. But believe me, the Welsh Christians are not just waiting for you to do it. The Welsh Christians are at the job and they're asking you to come and join in. Do you understand that? We're not asking American churches to come over and just do things for us. We're asking you to come and join in as we do it. That's the point. And we're convinced that the Lord wants to do new things in Wales. And why not through Bear Valley Community Church? Why can't the Lord use you in North Cardiff in a profound way to work with the churches there? Why not? He can do it through Bear Valley. I'm convinced of it. I think the Lord is up to new things. In the last 2.5 to 3.5 years, the world has changed profoundly, right from under your feet, right from under my feet. Every country, every city, every town, every village, every family, every individual has been affected. God's allowed the COVID pandemic to sweep across the world like an avalanche. It's touched every aspect of our society, government and business and education and the third sector. Nothing and no one has escaped. Every single person in this room, every one of us has been affected in one way or another. World Health Organization statistics tell us that in January of 2023, this month, there's been 660 million cases and 6.7 million deaths due to COVID. And of course, it's growing. But I wish that was all that was going on. Russia has invaded Ukraine, affecting the world, not just in Eastern Europe, but across the world. Devastating bushfires in Australia, floods in Indonesia, earthquakes in China, India, Iran, Philippines, Russia, and Turkey. There's been massive swarms of locusts in Asia, in East Africa, and in the Middle East. There's also been some fantastic things that are happening. The world is changing fast. Did you know that in April 2021, NASA's Ingenuity became the first vehicle to fly into the atmosphere of another planet? Did you know that? Mr. Zoom, Eric Yuan, has succeeded in marketing a communication platform that has revolutionized global communication. Everybody can do Zoom now. Everybody knows Zoom. I'm telling you what, I'd love to see that guy's bank balance. Oh my word. In fact, I'd love to meet him. God's got our attention. He's got my attention. He's got your attention. But what is he up to? What is God up to? 1,300 years ago, a highly trained man of royal blood, a fearless and visionary prophet called Isaiah, which means Jehovah saves, by the way. He's speaking into the lives of a disobedient people, a hard-nosed people, the people of Judah in the southern kingdom. In the first 39 chapters of Isaiah, he speaks about Judah's doom. God's had enough with you now. God's run out of patience now. You're going into exile. For 39 chapters, he does that. In chapter 40, though, he begins to say, and after you've been in exile, God's going to begin to restore you. He tells them that there's comfort coming on the way. In chapter 40, he says, there's going to be a voice crying out in the wilderness. And of course, eventually, that's John the Baptist. We know who that is. And then in chapter 42, Isaiah says, but after that voice, there's going to be one that doesn't cry out. He doesn't raise his voice. He just gets the job done. And that's the Messiah. He was going to come. And he's prophesying all of this years and years and years ahead. And then in chapter 43, where we're going to study today, he tells the Judeans that he was and is going to recover them and rescue them from the Babylonians. And he says that the waters won't go over you, the fires won't destroy your life. I've got new things for you. And then he says this, and I'm going to read it in two versions. Next screen. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Eugene Peterson, in a more poetic way, puts it like this. Forget what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? There it is, making a road through the desert and rivers in the Badlands. So what's Isaiah urging the Judeans to do and us to do today? Well, firstly, accept what has happened and see suffering for preparation for something new. Accept what's happened. This has happened. All this stuff in the last 3.5, 4 years, it's happened. But see it as preparation, because God's up to something new. The Judeans would go to Babylon. They would be in exile for 70 years. They would be persecuted and separated from their families and humiliated. That was going to happen. In other words, they were going to suffer. But that humbling would help them to learn valuable lessons, and God would bring them out. He said when, not if, they went through the fires and the floods and the devastation of exile, God would make new roads. He'd make new rivers. He'd make new pathways for them to journey on. And I say to you that pattern that I've just explained goes all the way through the Bible. It's not isolated in any way. God always has used a time of suffering to bring something new. It's a biblical pattern. Examples. After 400 years in Egyptian drudgery and slavery, God did a new thing. And he brought the Israelites out. Not across the Red Sea, but through the Red Sea. And the faith of the people rose. Remember that? After 13 years of abandonment in prison, God did a new thing. And he raised Joseph to be prime minister of Egypt. And he was even able to say to his brothers, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. God uses suffering to bring something new. He's done it for many, many, many years. Here's another. After 13 years, he's on the run from Saul. God did a new thing, and he brought David to be the king of Israel. David became wise and compassionate and full of faith during his suffering, and therefore became a great king, the best king that Israel ever had. And at the end of his book, Malachi prophesies another Elijah that would come, past John the Baptist. But it took 400 years of silence before the new Messiah came. King Jesus would come and he'd live a perfect life. And he'd die a horrible death for you and me on the cross. And he'd rise again and send his Spirit to live in you and through you, coursing through your veins. You've got Jesus living in you. But after 400 years, that's when Jesus came. Suffering brings something new. And we see the same principle in our world. Let's use some American examples. Colonel Sanders. Oh yeah. Colonel Sanders, aged 62 years old, when he begins to pitch his recipe for fried chicken. Over 1,000 restaurants rejected him, and then one in Utah said yes, and the rest is history. Edison had 1,000 attempts at the light bulb. 1,000 attempts. Einstein couldn't read until he was 8 years old. Henry Ford went bankrupt 5 times before he made a car in any color, as long as it's black. Do you remember that? Apparently, Walt Disney didn't have any imagination. Fred Astaire couldn't sing or act, but he could dance moderately. This is the suffering that brings the new thing. And I reckon you and I have lived long enough, haven't we, to honestly know that everything that we've ever achieved, anything that we're proud of, has come through a time of suffering first. Wouldn't you agree? It always comes through the suffering, and then the new thing begins. But we're wise when it comes. We're humble when it comes, and we're ready for the new thing. Suffering brings a new thing. And so here we are. We're recovering from COVID. We're facing new challenges in Russia and across the world. God's up to new things in every person, you and me. Some of you are already seeing those new things. You know exactly what they are. Others of you have no idea, but you sense something new is on the horizon. So how can we prepare? How can we prepare for our new thing, these new things that God's going to bring? Well, may I suggest that we keep asking ourselves 3 honest and personal questions. Because it begins with you and me. It begins with the person sitting in your seat. It begins with the person standing here. That's how change comes. That's how new things happen. New things happen in churches because people, individual people, embrace those new things. It's always individual first. Now, we're going to be vulnerable with you, and I'm going to share some things that the Lord's been speaking to me. So you're going to learn very quickly. I might be an ordained Baptist minister, probably the only one you know with this accent. But I'm not holy. I've got stuff that I'm not doing well in my life. The stuff that I need to change in order to prepare for the new things that God's bringing in my life. So I'm going to share them with you. And I hope you will have the humility to ask yourself also 3 questions that bring that new thing into being. First, what do I need to stop? What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to let go? What am I doing that's harming my relationship with you, Lord? With myself, my relationship with myself, my relationship with my family, my relationship with my friends? What's harming me? What do I need to stop? What personal habits do I have that hinder my walk with you? That's how change begins. That's how the new thing begins. For me, it's a phone addiction. And it got worse during COVID. I have a phone addiction. I've realized that I don't just rely on it to make calls or surf the net, but I fill the spaces of my life by picking up my phone. Time when I could spend with the Lord. Time when I could spend with other people. Time in a queue at the grocery store that I'm on my phone when I could be talking to the person next to me. My wife in COVID began to say, "Are you present with me now, or are you in Rob World?" I'm telling you, that's not good. It's not good. I need to change. And so I'm working with my wife to create some barriers. I've got an auto trader habit. You men might know about those kind of things. So I have 30 minutes. That's all I have. It's set on my phone. I only have 30 minutes. I have 1 hour on Safari every day. That's all I have. So these apps have been restricted for me, and I'm addressing what do I need to stop. And just before I leave the phone thing, may I say, a recent Business Insider survey said that the average iPhone user touches their phone 2,000 times a day. May not just be me in the room, I don't know. But it is me. It is me. How about you? What do you need to stop? What do you need to act on? Is my question for you today. 3 important quick things. The second question is this: what do I need to start? What do I need to start doing? What has God been whispering to me for months, years even, to start doing? Maybe it's a regular quiet time. Maybe it's more Bible reading. Maybe it's regular exercise. Maybe it's more quality time with your spouse and your kids. Maybe God's nudging you to have more conversations with your friends at work. Not just about God, but about life itself. Are you to become more relational? Maybe God's nudging you. He's nudging you forward to come and serve in Wales. Maybe he might be doing that. I don't know. What is God doing in your life with this new thing? What's he saying to you? You need to start. You may not have done it before, but you need to start doing this. The Lord's been whispering to me about my house. Now, I grew up in the house of an academic, Professor Burns, and he had so many friends and so many people who loved him and so many former students that when the washing machine went, and the other person said, "Professor Burns, I'll be right over. I'll fix your washing machine. In fact, I'll do anything for you." And I just thought that's what you did. But of course, I'm not as, I don't have as many friends as my dad. So I found myself having to call the washing machine guy, and I got to pay. I blamed my father. In fact, I blamed my father. I love him to death, but I blame my father for my lack of DIY probably all my life. It needs to stop. I'm 59 years old, and I need to take more care of my house. I need to clean more, restore more, do more garden work. It's my house. It's my responsibility. And I've started when a professional tradesman come in, because I still do, I hound him with questions. I ask him questions. How did you do that? How could I do that? And I want to learn how to fix my own washing machine. I want to learn how to fix my own stuff. It's something I need to start because God is telling me, you need to start that. Stop making excuses. You need to start looking after your house and doing DIY better. Now, some of you men are looking at me going, what planet's he on? I've been doing that all my life. Well, this is my thing. I don't know what your thing is. What do you need to start? That doesn't have to be the same thing, of course. What do you need to start? What you're going to act on. So what do you need to stop? What do you need to start? And then, what do you need to strengthen? I'm asking myself that question. What do I do regularly that if I did it more, it would be even more fruitful in my life? So Maybe, I do share my faith, but maybe we could share more our faith with our friends. Maybe you already disciple somebody or you already mentor someone. Maybe you could mentor one more, disciple one more. Maybe there's something that you already do, and when you do it, you feel his pleasure. Remember Eric Liddell in the Chariots of Fire movie who said, when I run, I feel his pleasure. What do you do where you feel God's pleasure? That if you did it more, there'd be even more fruit in your life. What do I need to strengthen? Do you give to your church's missional vision? Could you give a little more? Do you serve in your church's missional vision? Could you do anything else? Is there anything else that you could be involved in? The Lord's spoken to me about my personal evangelism and my mentoring and my coaching. And so now, 2 Fridays in the month, in the afternoon, my pastor and I, in Ainan, your partner, we walk the village and we tell people how nice their dogs are. I mean, Marianne taught us the way. We tell people how nice their dogs are. We kind of say hi to them and we just have conversation. We ask them if they'd like prayer. I'm doing that more. That's what the Lord's calling me to strengthen. He's calling me to get more involved with coaching. And I'm beginning now to coach more and more people with a professional coaching license that I have. What if you did the things that you're great at just a little bit more? What do I need to strengthen? Søren Kierkegaard, a philosopher and theologian in the 19th century, observed domestic geese and wild geese in his native Denmark. And the Lord downloaded a parable to him that I want to share with you today. He tells the story of a flock of domestic geese that lived contentedly in the farmyard. Most of them would hungrily eat the plentiful supply of food, and they'd also warm themselves in the lovely warm barns that the farmer had provided. They had very few cares in the world, and they'd chatter amongst themselves, discussing the quality of the food and the warmth of the barns, and they'd gossip about each other. You know what I mean. It seemed an idyllic life. Now, once a week, they'd come together in the corner of the yard, and they'd sit down, and the gander would tell them a story. Stories of old, stories of history, of the geese that had gone before them. One day, the gander told the domestic geese about the wild geese who didn't live in the farmyard. They weren't constrained by the farm. Their horizon was the open sky. Their food was what nature provided. Their shelter was what they could find. If the weather grew cold, they rose to the sky and they flew south, where it was warmer and the food was plentiful. All of the geese were incredibly inspired by this. They were proud of their wild geese brothers and sisters. What faith, what bravery, what courage they have. Wow! And after a while, they'd just go back to their old ways. It wouldn't change their lives. However, some of the geese began to eat less, gossip less, exercise more, and started to run around the perimeter of the farmyard. Because they said that when the wild geese come over next time, we want to fly in the sky with them. We want a wild geese existence. We want to be free, they said. We want to be brave, and we want to be fit and strong when they arrive. The rest of the domestic geese would gather in the middle of the farmyard, enjoying the food and the warm barns, and they gossip about the geese that were running around the edges. What on earth are they doing? They would say. They're not enjoying the food, and they're not enjoying the warm barns like we are. The wild geese won't notice them when they fly over the farmyard. And then one day in October, there was an excitement on the farmyard. The geese who had been exercising and staying healthy saw the geese flying overhead. They scurried, they ran, they hopped, and they rose to the heavens to join the wild geese as they flew away. And they were never seen again by the domestic geese, because in late November, though the domestic geese would try to fly, when the farmer came towards them with his knife, their goose was cooked. You see, God's doing a new thing in your life and my life. Don't miss it. It isn't enough to be stirred by something. You've got to act on it. For it to be real, you have to act on it. Let's not be taken surprised like the comfortable and overweight and unprepared domestic geese. Let's be prepared for the new thing that the Lord's doing in our life. Put it on the screen. Let's keep asking the three questions. What do I need to stop? What do I need to start? What do I need to strengthen? These three questions, added to the suffering that you've been through, prepare you and me for the new thing that God's bringing in our life. So we're going to have about 30 seconds. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads and close your eyes. I want you to get alone with God. And I want you to ask him, what do I need to stop? What do I need to start? What do I need to strengthen? I want you to carry that thought through over the coming weeks. What do I need to start, stop, and strengthen? So let's just have some time with the Lord. Ask him those questions. Amen. May God bless you, encourage you, provoke you, and prepare you for your new thing. And may your partnership in Wales challenge you in profound ways, but inspire you in incredible ways. And may it be more than you could ever dream of. Amen.